Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Real Point of View. My name is Greg Morgan, and I am your host for this evening, and I am the Real Movie Guy. Next to me is Mr. Stephen C., and he is the man who doesn't pick a bad movie. And together, we're going to try to figure out what movies did we really want to see in 2019 that we didn't see, and what are we looking forward to seeing in 2020, this brand new year in the millennium. Um, we talked about with our other cohorts in previous episodes about the 2019 in review and the things that we had seen and discussed amongst ourselves. And I think we covered quite a few movies. What do you think, Steve?
We kind of were all over the place, and we talked about everything from good suspenseful horror movies for the year to the action-packed stuff that we always love to talk about.
Yes, indeed. And yet, at the same time, I still didn't feel like I was really satisfied. I think in past years, I've come away with a lot of movies that I really wanted to see during the year, got to see a lot of those, and yet I was a little bit more fulfilled. This was a kind of a lean year for me. Not a lot of movies that I really just, was egging to see. And in the ones that I did see, they were okay, but nothing that just really, overwhelmed or not overwhelms me. What's the word? Wowed me. Um, and so, what's left? What's going to help fulfill my senses? What's going to fill the void that I'm missing for the rest of 2019's films? Now that we're almost in the second week, not even, we're in the second week of January in 2020. The new year kind of came in and just kind of snuck in, really, and again didn't overwhelm. But is it underwhelming? I don't know. So let's talk about movies quickly that you may have still wanted to see, Steve, that we didn't get a chance to see, and what are the ones we're going to look forward to. So I have one that was actually suggested to me, and then I kind of did a little due diligence and read up about it a little bit. And then I have one that's probably going to surprise a few people as to a movie that I really want to see, and it's actually a series of films, and this is just another portion of that series. So what about you, Steve? Any movies that you care to see that were 2019 films that you think are worth your watch?
One movie that I really wanted to see that I just did not get the opportunity to get out and see. And there was a lot of hype and then under hype and then like a lot of back and forth. So I didn't take the time to see it like I should have. And that was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay, so DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, right?
Yep.
So what was it about the movie that you wanted? What was it that was tugging at you that you really wanted to see it?
It was one. I'm a Quentin Tarantino fan. I've always been a fan of his movies. I've enjoyed his style that he's done. The cast that they put together is just, a who's who when it comes to casting, especially when you're making a movie about Hollywood. You kind of got to get big names to do it, and they did. And you got a bunch of guys that have worked together before and have done good work together. So it seemed like it could be a hit. The storytelling of it, the fact of who it's following around. It takes place in a 1950s style, and just that the grouping made me want to see it really. But the thing that kind of detracted me from it is the fact of there were people that were saying it was his magnum opus. It's his big movie. It's his, like, when you're going to think about Quentin Tarantino, you're going to think about this movie. And that really kind of turned me off to the movie.
But being that you're such a fan, why would it turn you off?
Because the expectation of that, Quentin Tarantino has done such a solid job for years and years and years of if you're a fan of his, every movie's a knockout of the park. And he's done so many good ones. For one to just come out and declare that this is his great movie is kind of like it's a small slap in the face of other movies that have set the tone for his career. And for people that are fans of his, it's like, you like all these other Quentin Tarantino movies, but this movie that you've never even seen, this movie that you've only gotten a trailer from, this is the best Quentin Tarantino movie. And it just kind of bothers me. It's setting an expectation that you're supposed to come to on your own when it comes to movies. There are certain celebrities, there are certain directors that have a movie that is just cemented to their name, but it's always set after the fact. It's never set as soon as it comes out. And that's one of the things that detracted me from the movie. I wanted to see it without it being almost overhyped. And then a lot of people were complaining, well, the 2 hours and 40 minutes are too long. It drug out. You could cut, 15 minutes off of it, or you could cut 20 minutes off of it, or there's some of this stuff that didn't matter, things like that. And it just didn't. The more I didn't go see it, the more people made me not want to go see it in theaters. It made me want to wait to where I didn't feel like the movie was going to be a letdown going in.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess with Quentin Tarantino, looking at past films, one of the things he's never ever seemed to have a problem is gathering a host of really good actors to be involved. And I don't know what stems to facilitate such a reputation. I'm, again, not saying I'm a huge fan necessarily, but I am a fan. Mm-hmm. I like the movies. They're fun, if they're nothing else. And a little quirky, and I like quirky. So nothing against any of that. But at the same time, how do you establish yourself so much that you can get such a great gathering of actors and actresses? And don't get me wrong, this is the kind of draw that someone like Scorsese would have, or some of the other great directors and producers out there. And he's been able to do that for decades right now. And if it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, there are things that you do expect to be present, if nothing else. But I don't know. I never really heard anyone who it would detract them from seeing it. But I get it. If it's too much hype, sometimes it makes you wonder.
Yeah, you may go in with a false expectation, and then the movie's a letdown in some way.
Yeah, I mean that happens. It does happen. But this is a movie that you're going to go see, obviously now. So.
Yeah, I'm going to see it. It's just a matter of time.
Copy that. Any other movies that have floated your boat, or something that you thought you missed by not seeing it so far that you think would be, as we started off before, fulfilling?
I do have one more, and it's the only movie of the whole year that I was just that, and I just didn't get the opportunity to go see it, kind of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but this one wasn't as high on the I need to see it in theaters to really enjoy it. I'm a fan of completing series. When another movie comes out that's in a succession of a movie franchise that I've actually enjoyed, I want to finish it. I want to see it.
Okay.
So it came out, let me remember exactly what day it came out. It came out September 20th, so it was in the middle of summer, and work was obviously not relegating me to be able to get out and enjoy myself as much as I would like.
That I understand, since I know a little bit about that.
But I really wanted to see Rambo.
Really?
I really wanted to see Rambo Last Blood. I've always enjoyed Stallone's Rambo character. I actually enjoyed the last Rambo movie they made quite a lot for him being an older, more grizzled which when you think about Rambo in the first three movies, to say someone's more grizzled than that guy seems weird and a little off. But I wanted to see this one because we're dealing with a guy that's found peace. He's finally put the war at rest. He's gone home. He's done. He's retired. He's finished. He's finally moved on. And yet there's something, it's just the guy. It's Rambo. It just pulls him right back in. And he has to become, or wants to become, I haven't seen the movie, I don't know like if he floats with it or not, who he was. Or maybe he can't escape it. Maybe that's just who he is. And I'm interested to see how they did the take. And it's called Last Blood, but it's Rambo. How could there be a Last Blood? There's not a Last Blood. There's just the next blood.
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's take a look. Let's take a very brief look at Marvel for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought Logan would end.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the Wolverine would continue on, and because they're mutants, that ability would continue on. But see, that movie it threw me for a loop a little bit because I was very, very sad at the end of that movie. Despite that they were trying to get you to feel and believe that the mutants would go on, it wasn't about that. It was about the mutants that we grew up with, the mutants that we knew, and the sad continents of these very almost seemingly invincible beings being very vulnerable. And like you and I talked a little bit earlier about Superman, for example, but being vulnerable in a situation where they were so bigger than life and stronger than strong, and especially as a unit. And here you have the Wolverine and the mastermind of everything, Professor X, going out like that. Man, that was tough to watch, but it gave us a little bit more sense of realism. That even in the best of circumstances, and even at his most valiant, because he was pretty much, as far as Logan, at his most valiant moment, to sacrifice himself for the greater good, which is what was always the problem with people understanding mutants in the first place. A lot of them were trying to not just survive, but, just want to live in a society that was working, and if it wasn't working, doing the things they could do to try to help make it better. And it was never seen as in that light. So I guess, why can't Rambo end? He is even more human, but here's the irony about things like that. You go from being the human who endures to the legend that survives. So, but yeah, that's interesting. Now, the two movies that I wanted to see, one was suggested to me recently, and by someone who's kind of a movie-holic, acquaintance of mine, and it wasn't a movie I was even on my radar to see. Then I started reading a little bit more about it, and it actually did perk my interest. So the movie that I want to see is a thriller about, I'm going to put it in a very, what I understand it to be, in my own little word here, leechism. Where, like the leech, like a parasite, and hint, that's the name of the movie, Parasite. Where you have these people who are trying to live the life of Ryan by attaching themselves to rich people and trying to live vicariously through them and watch what you wish for scenario in the thriller. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing Parasite. People who think they're doing something that's going to be cool and interesting and further their lives, and then maybe something happens that's not quite what they think is going to happen. And I think that's a cool thriller for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing Parasite. And as I look at the different movies and what some of the critics have given as far as their ratings and stuff, this actually got rated pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. And then, as you alluded to, with regard to a movie series and seeing it through to the end and watching it grow and prosper. Okay, you didn't quite say it like that.
No, I
Um,
didn't.
yeah, well, I was my own spin on it, but I too have a series that I wanted to continue to watch, and I have been watching over time. It was a movie that, when I first saw the first uh, uh, movie in the series about this subject matter, I wasn't really trying to watch it. I think I was just flipping through, trying to figure, and it was a movie that had already left the theater and was on streaming, so I could see it ease more readily. And I thought, I'd give it a shot. I don't know. It's animated. And then as I watched the movie, I started to like it. And then it in the midst of fantasy, it had a real good sense of reality. And it actually had things that occurred that I did not expect at all. And so it endeared me to the rest of the movies that came out. And I was never disappointed in any of the films, regardless of how quirky the title might be. But the constant in the title is what makes me go out to see it time and time again. And that's How to Train Your Dragon. The first movie shocked me with the sense of realism and violence, actually, that occur where in many animated films, especially films that seem like they're going to be even more cartoony or more comical than anything else, you're thinking, okay, yeah, I can go in there, lose my mind a little bit, not have to worry. But here's a movie where, as I was watching the movie, it got more and more intriguing because it was more melodramatic than it was comedic. It was more melodramatic than it was just a fun fantasy film to watch. It became a little bit more epic as the film continued. And so I thought, wow, that first film was really good. And then when they said there was going to be a sequel, I thought, okay, I'll do the sequel. It was good enough for me to like the first movie, and I like the sequel just as well, almost as well as the first movie. And that's kind of rare a lot of times in the sequels. And sometimes they get it right by the third movie. Well, here's a movie that keeps going and getting it right, getting it right, getting it right, getting it right. And now with The Hidden World, that is another movie I really want to see. They decided to have this magical dragon, very different dragon, almost like a stealth dragon in the first film. And now in the last two films, we have another dragon of similar ilk. And so now I want to see how far they're going to go with this storyline. And the story has reunions, just like families, regular family reunions, only obviously a little bit more fantastic, but at the same time, no less serious and no less important, and no less telling the reason why our main character, our antagonist, is who he is in this film. So if you have an opportunity to see the original movie, How to Train Your Dragon, you'll understand a little bit what I'm talking about. And I think you too will become a little bit more endearing to this film because of the similarities that this fantasy has to real life. So those are the two movies I want to see from 2019. So with that being said, Steve, we've discussed some movies that we think were obviously viable, that maybe a lot of us out there in movie land and those of you watching our podcast here may not have had the opportunity to see, and then didn't have any understanding of, that sometimes these movies exist that we didn't know existed. I think the Golden Globes kind of left so much out to be desired. And with a lot of these films, there were a lot of films. I don't think it was a lack of production, but it was a lack of production value. So I think these films that we're mentioning to you now may have a little more production value and a little bit more discerning for you to see and watch. So now with that being said, Steve, let's go to 2020, which is a really good TV series, by the way. Whether they talk about more political things, whether they talk about more life asserting things, or if they talk about the hidden gems that are lurking behind the scenes in some of the 2020 investigations that they have. Real good TV series, I think. All its different facets have been pretty good, I thought. But now let's talk about movies, right? So what are you looking forward to looking at this year in 2020?
Well, we were just talking about series, and I've talked about series, and you've talked about series, and I feel like we're going to talk about series a little bit more this year.
Copy that. All right.
Because there's a couple series. There's two in general, and they both get another installment this year. And they've been around for decades.
I know for sure one you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, one is easy. One is easily great. The other one is my favorite iteration of the character. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. The first movie, Godzilla vs. King Kong. Super excited, super stoked. It's Godzilla vs. King Kong. It's the big bad versus the bigger badder. Whichever way you want to go, it goes both ways. Everybody's got their opinion on who's what. Giant ape, huge brain, really smart, radioactive fire. That's all I'm saying. Like you're on two opposite sides of the fence. And with the last movie, King of the Monsters, doing everything right that it's supposed to do. What do we want? More monsters. What do we want? More monster fights. What do we want? Less human beings. Done. And we have a compelling story to go with it.
I want to interject one thing here, Steve.
All right.
We have to go see that together.
Okay.
Because it's your favorite monster against my favorite monster.
Then we got to go see it. That's
so
how it's going to go.
We got to do that together.
It's going to be awesome. My second movie that I definitely want to talk about, that I'm definitely seeing, which again is my favorite iteration of the character, is No Time to Die.
Yes, sir.
The new 007.
Yes, sir.
James Bond is back. Daniel Craig in possibly his last run as James Bond, as 007. He's playing an older 007 who's trying to survive in a new age, and things are just kind of getting outside of the realm of what he could do, but it's still James Bond. And Daniel Craig in general is my favorite Bond for the reason that he's the most human Bond that we've ever seen, in my opinion. He fights through adversity and pain more than the other characters have been shown. Some Sean Connery, Roger Moore, even Pierce Brosnan were shown to be almost superhero-esque.
I think that's a good assessment.
Where Daniel Craig has had to, the character of James Bond has had to endure the actual pain and suffering and things that kind of person may have to go through. And it just makes the character more real to me. And I've enjoyed his acting. I enjoy Knives Out, where he was in that movie. He did an amazing job with his character. I like how he plays. He's not afraid to go outside the box when it comes to his acting. But as James Bond, he just pulls it off so well. And I can't wait.
It's interesting because I too agree. He has been probably the most human James Bond, and not just aesthetically, but emotionally, not just cerebrally, but emotionally. Here's a guy who, you know, other James Bonds, as you alluded to, where if someone was hurt or killed, they'd go, that's too bad, and then pretty much go on. But here, when his girlfriend is killed in one of the movies, his emotion of that situation goes 2 more movies because he still hasn't gotten over it. And it took a long time for him to find that woman, that partner who was as gritty and devoted to the cause as he was, and yet he could feel emotional about. And when that woman was taken away from him, his emotional structure, it was almost like his heart was pulled out. And despite M's many conversations and trying to get him back on track and get his mind off of these things, it was difficult because now he was not just James Bond the agent, not just James Bond the weapon. Now he was James Bond the vigilante. Now he was James Bond with an attitude and vengeance. So yeah, all the other James Bonds, not so much. I think Sean Connery was probably the coolest James Bond. And I think even Pierce Brosnan had an air of coolness about him. But like you said, not realistic. Using the weapons and it got him out of everything and they were just cool. No, Roger Craig comes out, his character, his Bond comes out scathed. And if it's not physically, it's emotionally scathed. And he's also gotten to the point where the other James Bonds were calculating, whereas this James Bond is more ruthless in his assessment of things. Calculated, yeah, to some degree, but you know, he's gotten to the point where he doesn't mess around anymore. He's getting to the point, and that may be because he's older, but he's getting to the point because I think it's more he's tired of wasting time. He wants to get the thing done now and get it done. Not, oh, everything's so cool. I'm gonna, hang out here. I've got the great blazer. Yeah, he still has a great blazer. He still has some cool toys, but it's his essence that truly is foreboding in these James Bond sequels. And I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him. Now, there was a word out there very briefly about the new James Bond being a woman. Well, that has been talked about again and shot down. It's not going to be a woman. It's going to be another man. They just haven't told us who that's going to be.
Well, the one thing that I did like about the trailer is there is a woman that is a 00. Anybody who's seen Captain Marvel will know she was the actress that played Captain Marvel's best friend in the movie. And from the trailer that I see, I really enjoy her character. And I really enjoy what she could possibly bring to that style as a 00. As kind of a counterpart, an opposite, an opposing force in some way to Daniel Craig's 007. So it makes it very interesting for that.
And it's ironic because I thought they were trying to bring Naomi Harris's character as Moneypenny to that role, and they decided not to go that way.
Which I agree with. The Moneypenny is not the person that can be that character, but it was a nice lead up to where they created Moneypenny. So, but what are you looking forward to seeing?
Okay. I've always been kind of military history has always been interesting to me. Growing up in a household where military history, my dad was in the Air Force, and a lot of the films and TV that I remember my dad watching dealt with different levels of military, from the Civil War through the war and the conflicts that, like my dad was in the Korean conflict, which is just before Vietnam. So, and more conflict than a war, not as large, and it didn't last as long as why a conflict instead of a war. But with that being said, Dad had a lot of interest in those types of things. So I was watching the Green Berets with John Wayne, or I was watching Buffalo Soldiers with Rayford Johnson, or I was watching um, The Alamo with John Wayne, or a lot of John Wayne in there, a lot of Clint Eastwood in there for me.
Always a lot of John Wayne.
A lot of John Wayne. And Sands of Iwo Jima, just a plethora, myriad of just a lot of movies like that. So the movie that I really want to see for a lot of reasons is it's supposed to be a cinematic wonder of detail in how they actually filmed this movie, more so than the credible acting, which is also being hailed in this movie too, and that's 1917.
Uh-huh.
So 1917 was the latter part of the First World War, and this movie is supposed to have some special effects. It's basically about two soldiers that are sent to the front to try to avert what the commanders think is going to be a horrific loss. And one of the guys that they're sending to an area where his brother is. And so if he doesn't make it, his brother won't survive. And so that's an incentive for him to get there, and he and his associate to get what they need to get done. And so all the things that are happening around them, all the war effects that this movie is supposed to have, I think I really want to see this in an IMAX. So that is one of the movies I really want to see. Now, again, going back to sequels, and this is a sequel dual years, looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I too want to see a sequel. And of course, I agree with you about No Time to Die. I think that's going to be wonderful. But I'm not trying to see this particular sequel that I want to see because I think it's going to be wonderful. I want to see how they approach a subject that I've always thought was interesting to me. As you grow up and you become whoever you become, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a wonder how you got there. And then once you get there and you have become more mature about situations and people and issues, how is it that you affect those coming behind you? How do they stand on your shoulders in order to reach similar heights or achieve better things and also be a beacon for someone else? So this movie is more about giving back, more about truly understanding that you too stood on shoulders of others to get where you needed to go, and truly understanding what that truly means and coming to grips with that despite the rebellion that's still inside of you. Do you know what movie I'm talking about, Steve?
I believe you're talking about Top Gun.
I am talking about Top Gun.
He's talking about Top Gun.
Yeah, man, I want to see Maverick come back and understand that, yeah, you did all those cool things, but if it wasn't for these people, you wouldn't have got there. And now it's your turn to show somebody the way, to be the beacon of light for somebody else. And how do you do that when you're still a rebel?
Right. And that's one of the things that we were talking about earlier, where I was talking about, my one problem with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was people coming out saying it was his best work. It was his magnum opus. It's been years since Tom Cruise did Top Gun.
Oh, yeah.
The movie is amazing. It's one of those movies that continues to stand up against other movies the older it gets.
Yeah.
And it never gets old. But everyone thinks of Tom Cruise And at some point in time, if you're a Tom Cruise fan, if you've watched all of his movies, if you paid attention, that's Maverick.
Right.
And to see him come back after all this time and play this character again, and judging from the trailers as playing the exact same character versus having to, grow up and be something different. And like you said, how is a rebel going to educate all these people who need to, find ways to move up themselves and become taught and get better? Then a rebel is maybe the best guy to bring in. Somebody who's not afraid to show you there's only so far you can go with rules.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things about rebels is they find ways that are not against the rules, but aren't necessarily the rules.
Right.
And I feel like it's great to have this story going on. And with him having to become more mature as this movie's going on, and, I feel like it's going to be a great movie. I got high expectations for this movie and for Tom Cruise acting in it.
Yeah, I do too. And I, as you alluded to, I really liked the original movie. It was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
And not so much out of the realms of reality either.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to make decisions that other people would not make because of being too stringent, too, as you put it, by the book. And sometimes you have to let your gut, your emotion, lead the way and take you out of the realms of fear being too much for you, and let fear work for you like it should.
Mm-hmm.
That is very interesting and very much the case for Top Gun. So I got a few other movies real quick, and I'm just going to say them real quick. Just Mercy is a new movie that's coming out with Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx, and it is a true story of a situation where someone is wrongly imprisoned, and the likelihood of them getting out and surviving is minimal because it's a movie about someone who is facing the death penalty, and many others who are facing the death penalty in similar ilk. So it's a true story. I'm really into biopics, and so I'm looking forward to that. Now, another movie I'm looking forward to, which is a biography of one of the best singers I've ever heard growing up, and one of the most beautiful melodic voices out there. And don't get me wrong, I love music. I'm a music enthusiast, very eclectic in my musical taste. So it's more encompassing, and I appreciate that just about being able to enjoy so much. That's a blessing of wealth. But this is one of those rare voices, and a person who's been involved with so many different people over her lifetime from so many different genres of music, and that's Linda Ronstadt. Her movie, The Sound of My Voice, is out this year, and I can't wait to see that. And I've seen this as a trailer of that, and all the different people are talking about her and the sadness that they feel because of Linda Ronstadt losing her voice. And so to have such a beautiful voice, not just aesthetically, which I guess is my word for the year, but also the warmth and the sheer entertainment that her voice provided, and how many different people it's affected in all the different genres that she attempted, and also from other genres, and they just liked her music. It's my first taste of her background group, which became one of my favorite groups also, which are the Eagles. And so it's going to be a wealth of musical excitement for me just to watch it. And I've always loved Linda Ronstadt, so this will be my way of paying my homage to her by watching this film. And lastly, I am, if I'm nothing, a Marvelite when it comes to film. And the Marvel movies have always been dear to me because I was a Marvel comic book kid growing up. And so I want this to be a good movie. Don't know what it's going to be like, but I do know that the young woman playing this character has always been, has done such a good job with this character. And so the movie that I'm looking forward to is watching Marvel's version of Black Widow.
Mhm.
Can't wait to see that. Miss Romanoff kicking butt and not and us understanding why and how and getting an explanation, because I know that's another reason why I like it when Marvel has all these groups like the Avengers and the X-Men and all that, and then gives us a little snippets of who these people are, either before and during or after they've come into our knowledge. And so I'm looking forward to that that movie quite a bit. And I kind of want to see the New Mutants too, but I think I'm even more inclined to see Black Widow. That's my deal. So I've thrown that out there. Any other movies other than Godzilla versus King Kong?
Yes, actually, I do have a couple more that I'd like to talk about. One, when it was announced, I was skeptical. After seeing the trailer, I am 100% all aboard, and that's Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Really?
I am excited about this because it looks like they're trying to be faithful to the old ones. They are advancing timeline, which is necessary to do something like this, but it just looks like they're going to tell a new story using the old ways. And you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with bringing in new characters, trying to create a new generation out of something that has already done so well and has appealed to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see in the trailer where there's little homages to the old. The fact that they're writing in the Gen 1. So it's all the little small things. I feel like this is going to be exciting and funny, just like the old Ghostbusters movies. And I feel like it's going to do a good job paying respect to the old movies while creating something new. I'm excited to see that. Another one I'm excited to see is based on controversy. And it's not anything major controversy. It's not world-breaking controversy. It's a video game controversy. There's a video game movie coming out. And it may have flown under the radar for some people because they don't expect it to be good. But my favorite hedgehog, possibly your favorite hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, Sonic, yeah. You know what? I think that's going to be good.
I think it is. And I am going to see it because we have a studio that actually listened. No one liked the original design. No one liked the way Sonic looked. It was a bad look. It didn't look good for the character, what they were trying to portray, everything that they were trying to, it just did not look good. So they went back, they took their time, and they completely re-rendered this character, and they redid scenes. It cost the company money, and a lot of money to do this, and to provide something they feel their fans would enjoy. Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik automatically hit a high note for me with this movie. I love Jim Carrey. I know it's been a long time since he's had a big movie, and I'm not saying this is going to be it, but I've always been a fan of his acting, and I'll always go support Jim Carrey in what he does. But I'm going to support this movie because they listened. They took ideas, they heard the backlash, everything that came out, and they said, you know what? You're right. We're catering to you. We're creating something that we want you to come enjoy. And I'm going to support this movie because that's what they did. They said, we listen, and we're going to do it.
Well, you know what? The trailers look good. It looked quirky, it looked fun, and I'm excited about seeing it. Okay, so I got a movie that I'm trying to decide whether I want to see it or not. Because again, going back, ladies and gentlemen, I'm kind of a purist. And so I don't like you to redo my movies. If I like the first movie,
Um,
and then you make the next movie and it's just subpar, don't make it subpar. But see, here's the irony. You don't know you're making it subpar. But most of the time, 75 to 80% of the time, just leave it alone. So what's the movie? You trying to figure it out, Steve?
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm looking across my stuff. When you said, is it a remake?
Yes.
Oh, um,
As
I
the
don't know if I have anything.
as one of the lead characters says, a boy like that, you okay, what did she say? A
Yeah,
boy
I
like
don't.
that, he killed your brother. Forget that boy and find another. One of your own kind. Stick to your own kind. I like to be in America. Okay, by me in America. Or tonight won't be just any night. We're gonna rumble tonight. We're gonna jazz up and have us a ball.
Yeah, I'm missing.
There's a
Oh, is it
place
called
for
Soul?
us. Somewhere a place for us. G opposite Krupke. Okay. You don't know this movie, do you, Steve?
I feel like I should, and I'm
Well,
ashamed of myself for not knowing it.
don't be, because this movie came out when I was a small child. And then the movie had a resurgence when I was a young, just became a teenager.
When you were a whippersnapper.
I was like 12 and 13 years old when it had its revival. And now they decided to remake it. So Rita Moreno, one of my favorite actors growing up, and back then, pretty attractive woman, great dancer. And what was the guy's name? George Sakaris, great dancer, good actor. And they made this movie called West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
And now in 2020, they have redone it. Now, remember the guy from
Ansel Elgort.
Yes.
From
Two good
Baby
movies.
Driver.
Yes, Baby Driver. He's playing Tony. And Arana Du Bois is playing Anita. This is going to be an interesting movie because the cast actually looks good. My problem is it's a remake of one of my favorite movies as a child. And I don't know how to take it right now. So they better do a good job, is all I got to say. And I'm not a big person on horror movies and fantasy horror, but I'm looking forward to, they changed the name from the original story. I'm looking forward to Gretel and Hansel.
Oh, yeah.
That actually looks kind of cool. So I think 2020 is going to give me a little more fulfilling feeling because of the movies that are out that I really want to see. Now, I don't remember if this movie is a 2020 or not, but it's a movie worth seeing, I think. The trailers are really good, and I like the producer of the movie. The producer of the movie is Chadwick Boseman, and the name of the movie is 21 Bridges. And I think this is going to be a wonderful film. Now, there's no way to know one way or the other if any of these films, as we're looking at it, are going to be Oscar worthy. I'm not even expecting this to be that, but I am expecting it to be a good story that's being told. And lately, especially lately, Chadwick Boseman has been aligning himself with some really good films. And even though Black Panther was a really good film, a movie that came out earlier in the same year is a movie I like just as well, and it didn't get anywhere near the publicity, and that's Message from the King. If you haven't seen Message from the King, you need to look see Message from the King.
Check it out on Netflix.
It is a good movie, and it has a real good twist, especially toward the middle and the end. And he's been a stellar actor in many films that he's been in, but I think 21 Bridges is his coup de grace. This looks like it's going to be an awesome film. And me personally, the genre that I like to write in, which is suspense thriller, I think that's what this is. And I think it just looks like it's going to be wonderful. So I can't wait to see that. I say that for last for me because everything about it looks like the kind of crime drama I want to see that has corruption and good police work looks like. I'm hoping. So for me, that's probably a movie I wasn't sure if that was 2019 or 2020.
It came out in November.
Okay, so the end of 2019. So I haven't seen it yet. It's still out here near us here, Steve. So I'm looking forward to seeing that film and excited to see that. A lot of times when the producer is an actor, they give it a little bit more credence because they have more invested now than they had even just as an actor. And so I think I like that. Idris Elba is another actor who has produced some really good work, but it's on the small screen, and it's the BBC screen because he is actually British. And that's Luther. If you haven't seen the TV show Luther, he's taken the realms of a police officer who's a little bit narcissistic and psychopathic, actually, and yet a very cerebral type of detective who he feels just like the criminals. And so that's how he catches them in a way. And I know that's not necessarily a unique theme, but the way he goes about it, it seems pretty unique to me. And he's facilitated a wonderful TV series in Luther. And I think Chadwick Boseman probably, I'm looking to see that if he does the same thing with this movie, 21 Bridges, because the trailers look really awesome. And there's some really good actors in it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I got one more.
Go for it, brother.
It comes out February 14th, which is exactly the same day that Sonic comes out. So I'm going to have to flip a coin on which one I'm going to see.
I don't know. Might have to find. I was going to say something really badly.
I may have to double see movies.
Yeah, I may have to get that day off. And so maybe we could try to. They're not gonna let both of us be off, bro. It's just not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Unless we just have to do it on a Saturday.
But talking about continuing series, and this seems like it's going to be a season for it. Like this year is going to be big on continuing movie series and keeping things going. I want to see The King's Man.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to say something about that.
Because the one thing that always is bad is when you do a prequel after the fact. A lot of times it never pans out. You rewrite what you've tried to do. You mess up in your lore and everything, your world building. The one thing that I think is going to go well for The King's Man is it's going to be set so far in the past. I mean, this is like the beginning of The King's Man. how it all started, where it all began. And I feel like they're going to set it so far back that you can't mess up what you've already done. So I feel like standing alone, it's going to be a good movie without even seeing the others. And one where you could actually see the movies out of order in which they were done, where you could see The Kingsman, then you could go back and watch The Kingsman and then the second Kingsman movie. And I'm excited about this film. The cast is awesome.
It is. Ray Fiennes, bro.
Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, Gemma Arden. Yeah. One of my absolute favorite actors is Damon Husso. I love him. I absolutely love him in almost everything I see him do. Charles Dance is in it. And it just, the list kind of keeps going on for good actors and actresses. And I feel this movie's going to be good. The trailer has got me super excited for it. And I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I saw that too. And I was wondering if you're going to touch on that. I actually thought you were going to touch on it earlier. But I agree with you. And I think what I'm hoping is that as they go back in time and start to move forward, we'll get better explanation of things that we didn't understand.
Right.
And that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
That's going to be awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've taken up a lot of your time purposely. But also, too, to try to get you to see some of the really good films that are out there that you may have missed in 2019, and looking forward to movies this year. As I alluded to, I think it's going to be a more of a wealth-filled year with films that are coming out. And, you know, goodbye 2019 and some of the films that we're going to watch before it's all said and done. But I think this is going to be a better year in film, and I'll probably look much more forward to the Oscars in the coming year. But I'm still going to try to do my due diligence and watch the Oscars this year and see what they think about the films that have come out from 2019 and see what films they think are really good and see if I agree. That's kind of what we film critics are looking forward to doing, finding out what other films that may or may not be worth it, in our opinion. So thanks again for watching us here on Real Point of Views. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch some of our previous archives videos on film. And also, too, if you're more of a listener, check out some of our archives features on Blog Talk Radio. You can also catch us on Google Podcasts. So thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful night. We appreciate you and hope to see you again next time here on A Real Point of View. Good night, everybody.